Merhaba, herkes beni duyuyorsa etkinliği başlatmak istiyorum. Bir kişi duyuyoruz derse devam ediyorum konuşmaya.
Evet, Ezgi'cim
Harika,
duyabiliyoruz.
tamam. Hoş geldiniz. Çok fazla bekletmek istemiyoruz. Etkinlik akışında da birileri eklenecektir. Ben saat 10'u 1 geçti. O yüzden başlatıyorum. Ben Ezgi Aktan, Software One'ın marketing yöneticisiyim. Zaten size sürekli ara ara gelen maillerden beni biliyorsunuzdur. Bugün çok zengin bir ajandayla karşınızdayız. Çok önemli bir ürünümüz Runecast. İlk kez bir webinarda hep birlikte değerli iş ortağımız Desoft'la birlikte size Runecast tanıtıyor olacağız. Hem Desoft'tan hem Runecast'ten konuşmacı misafirlerimiz var. Ben çok sözü uzatmak istemiyorum. Küçücük bir akıştan da bahsedeceğim. Önce Runecast'e dair genel bir bilgi veriyoruz. Sonra teknik bir session'ımız oluyor. Ardından da hali hazırda hala session'da olan kişiler arasında bir hediye çekilişimiz olacak. Şimdi ben sözü bakıyorum Kutlu, aynen. Bizim güvenlik yöneticimiz, Software One Güvenlik Müdürü Kutlu Şensoy'a devretmek istiyorum. Buradaysan Kutlucuğum sana geçebiliriz.
Günaydın diliyorum herkese. Teşekkürler bu güzel etkinlik için. Hem de Softa hem Ezgi'ye teşekkür ederiz. Birçok zaten katılımcılar arasında müşterimiz var, bizi tanıyorlar. Ben hani çok fazla böyle vakit çalmak istemiyorum. Runecast gibi değerli bir ürün ki özelliklerini hemen müşterilerimizle buluşturmak için çok kısa konuşacağım. Uzun zamandır güvenlik tarafında sektördeyiz ve hani artık legacy ortamların dışında On-prem'de işte cloud'da kullanabileceğimiz ortamlarda gelişiyor gün geliştikçe. Burada gelişmeyen çok fazla müşterimiz var. Uygulamalarını bu tip ortamlara, mikroservis uygulamalarıyla beraber fazla buradaki açıkları görebiliyor olmak, buradaki uyumluluk kuralları için bir aksiyon alabiliyor olmak, bunları raporlayabiliyor olmak çok önemli bir konu. Runecast'te buraya tam parmak basan bir ürün. O yüzden ben hemen hızlıca Yunus Bey'e bırakıyorum. Öncelikle onu da bir de soft'tan bahseder, sonra da ürünle beraber devam etmeyi düşünüyorum. Tekrar teşekkür ediyorum herkese.
Çok teşekkürler. Şöyle kameramı da açayım. Herkese günaydın öncelikle. Ezgi Hanım ve Software One ekibine de ben de teşekkür ederim. Bu güzel organizasyon için. Sizlere de hoş geldiniz diyorum. Ben sözü Simon'a bırakmadan önce, Simon Runecast tarafında bizim bölgede bütün pre-sales'lerin başındaki arkadaşımız. Aynı zamanda Runecast'teki country yöneticimiz Ertuğ Bey de bizler arasında. Çok kısa anlamda Runecast neler yapıyor, neden müşterilerimiz Runecast'i tercih ediyor? Birkaç kelam ettikten sonra Simon Ahmet'e de sözü bırakacağım. Şimdi baktığımızda Runecast aslında 4 tane ana yapıya hitap eden bir çözüm. Bunlardan bir tanesi denetim, diğeri keşif ve yönetimi yapıyor ve iyileştirmeleri sağlıyor. Runecast baktığınızda normalde 2 ana başlıkta bir sistemlerin daha efektif işlemesi ve yönetilmesi için önceden sizlere nerede ne tip eksiklikler var ve bu eksiklikleri nasıl gidermeniz gerektiğine dair bilgiler veren bir çözüm. Aynı zamanda denetim tarafından kastettiğim hani PCI DSS, KVKK, GDPR, işte CIS gibi bütün bu audit işlemlerini ve auditsel olarak sizlerin daha iyi bir hem compliance taraflarına, daha iyi bir security taraflarında neler yapmanız gerektiğini söyleyen bir çözüm. Günümüzde hepimiz bildiğimiz gibi en büyük dezavantajımız hepimizin zaman çalıştığımız şirketlerde. Runecast şuna yarıyor. İşte Red Hat ortamları olsun, OpenShift ortamları olsun, Windows ortamları olsun, VMware ortamları olsun veya cloud sistemleriniz olsun, AWS'ten Azure'a kadar. Bütün buradaki kuruluş dokümanlarını inceleyip sizin sistemlerinizle ilgili neler yapılabilir? Aslında kısa bir kitap özeti çıkarıyor. Ve bu yüzlerce sayfalık kuruluş dokümanlarına bakıp 7 veya 8 adımda sizin sistemlerinizin daha iyi çalışması için bu adımları sizlere teker teker ana ekrandan söylüyor. İster iseniz ben bunlara da bakmayayım, 7-8 adımda da bunlara bakmadan nasıl yapabilirim derseniz, bazı durumlarda Runecast CLI tarafındaki bilgileri çıkarıp sizin sistemlerinizde copy-paste mantığıyla bu patchleri, bu eksikleri nasıl giderebileceğinizi söyleyen bir tool. Türkiye'de baktığımız zaman Türk Telekom'dan tutun Türk Hava Yolları'na, TAV'a, TGS'ye kadar birçok müşterimiz kullanıyor. Müşterilerimiz kullanırken governance, security departmanları, operasyon departmanları veya DevSecOps ekipleri, DevOps ekipleri kullanıyor. Ve hepsinin ortak paydada birleştiği tek bir nokta var. Runecast aslında zamandan tasarruf ettirip %90'a yakın problemleri önceden keşfetmelerini sağlıyor ve hızlı ve çabuk şekilde bu problemlerini nasıl giderebileceğinizi söyleyen bir tool. Ben sadece böyle bir kısa bir giriş yapmak istedim. Tekrardan Software One'daki arkadaşlarıma teşekkür ederim. Bu güzel organizasyon için. Sizlere de hoş geldiniz diyorum. Ve Simon Ahmet'e sözü bırakıyorum.
Good morning.
Simon.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Simon.
Okay. Yeah. So, good morning. My name is Simon Ahmet. As you've probably noticed, I've got Ahmet as a surname. I'm half Turkish Cypriot and half English. So I do understand Turkish. So if there's any questions at the end, I can respond in a Cypriot way, Turkish Cypriot way. So I've been working for Runecast now for just up to 2 years. My previous life included companies in the UK, so Microsoft and Commvault. I was senior pre-sales there. So today, really, what I want to do is not really give you too much information with PowerPoint. We'll talk about the product, we'll demonstrate the product, but as a starter, I want to explain the architecture so it's in your mind as to where Runecast fits. So let's see if I can just share something here. I'll switch my camera off now. So can you see my screen?
Evet, Simon,
Yes, we can.
Okay, so basically I just want to show you this. So Runecast is a virtual appliance that gets deployed into your data center. Okay, so that appliance can either be deployed in a vSphere environment via an OVA, or it can be deployed on Kubernetes as an application on Kubernetes. And essentially, it then has API hooks into all these different platforms. So it could be Amazon, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, for example, Windows and Linux, Kubernetes, VMware. Okay, so we support these platforms, and I'll go into more detail about that as we go along. And essentially, in the back end, if you imagine the kind of antivirus definition update mechanism, Runecast is very similar. So we have an AI assisted engine that sits in our infrastructure, and that goes and looks at all the knowledge base information, hardware compatibility list information, best practice documents, blogs, social media, and it also goes and looks at all the security hardening guidelines and all the security standards. KVKK is one that we support, for example. So, and CIS, PCI, ISO, and we go and read all of that human readable information, and we make it machine readable, and then that gets downloaded on a weekly basis to the Runecast analyzer, and then we scan your systems. So it's a very, very effective way of taking the information that's available out there, and then basically essentially scanning your systems against that. We also do things like vulnerabilities, and we have CISA KEV, so known exploited vulnerabilities and so forth. And they get updated within 24 hours when a critical vulnerability gets released as well. Now, another thing, the virtual appliance can be air-gapped, so it does not need to be directly connected to the internet. Now, if you're a regulated industry, if you're military or if you're government or banking, essentially there are very strict rules on what sort of information can leave your data center. So some of our competitors are mainly kind of a SaaS type solution where that information leaves the data center. And people generally don't like that. So this is an on-premise solution. Some of our customers, we have a lot of military customers, so NATO utilize our software. The British Royal Navy utilize the software on their nuclear submarines, and so do the US Navy, because it does not need direct internet connectivity, and they can scan their systems while they're under the sea. So that's just a brief outline of the architecture and what we do. Let me see. Sorry, I've killed this. Right, let me see if I can now share. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
we can.
Okay. So I've logged into the Runecast Analyzer interface here. So essentially what we have is it's a login, and there's different authentication methods for logging into the console. And we're presented with this initial dashboard. So once the deployment for Runecast is very, very easy. It's a 1.8 gig OVA that gets downloaded, and it deploys within about 10-15 minutes into your environment, and then we run the definition updates onto it. Configuration is very, very straightforward. So if I'll give you an idea here, and this will give you some indication as to the supported platforms as well. So you have to bear with me. My internet is not mega quick because I'm in North Cyprus, but here we go. So if we look here, we add our vCenters here. It's read-only. We don't need any elevated permissions. It's non-intrusive, so we can add our vCenters via API hooks. We also have operating systems. So operating systems is Windows and Linux. That is the only thing that requires us to deploy a very, very small, lightweight agent. And that agent is based upon OS query. So it's very, very secure. In fact, it was the US military with the DISA STIG elements that wanted us to develop this, and we developed it, and it's good enough for them in terms of security and in terms of there is no performance hit on the host. But in the future, we will be developing an agentless approach to operating systems as well. We support NSXT, so we just add Google Cloud, Azure, Horizon, AWS, Kubernetes, and VMware Cloud Director. So you can see that we have a completely heterogeneous setup. It's very, very straightforward to deploy. So once we've added these systems, we then just run an analysis. And then the analysis will then start giving us results. So let's go back to the main dashboard. Bear with me while it just updates. So here, this gives us an indication as to overall what is going on in the environment. So the last 10 analysis, these are all the changes. We can do that by issues or objects. This will just give us news about what's being updated. We have all the systems that we have deployed listed here. And then this will give us all the details about what's going on. So here, there's 319 vulnerabilities, and 32 of them are KEV issues. So what do we mean by KEV issues? KEV issues are known exploited vulnerabilities, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. Knowledge-based articles that are applicable. Log KBs discovered in the last 7 days. And then when we look here, these are all the different security standards where we're seeing different things happening in the environment. So here we have KBKK, for example, as well. Okay. We also look at things like configuration drift. So what's changing in the environment from a configuration point of view. So this just gives us an overall view as to what's going on. And then when we look here to the left, we have security and compliance. So this is the security side of things that we do. And then we have the IT operations things that we do. So if you imagine with Runecast, what you can do is you can deploy one product which will cover your Kubernetes, your Windows, your Linux, your vSphere, your cloud platforms, but then it will also cover security and compliance and IT operations management around the ITOM, around that as well. Now, if you imagine the way that people do that today is they'll have multiple processes, i.e. human beings doing the work to look for best practices and audit their systems, or they'll have multiple products. And if you imagine suddenly the solution that is meant to be making your life easier, you end up having to manage multiple products. Each of those products has their own set of training, their own set of infrastructure, their own set of reporting, and it becomes costly. We simplify that. So we basically have one single product that can manage these multiple scenarios. So from a cost perspective, it saves money and it saves time. So let's start with some of the issues here. So if I click here, it will go into something called detected issues. And this is everything across both ITOM and security. And I can then go and basically just want to see what's happening with CIS in my environment and critical. So there's nothing critical with CIS, major. Okay. So it enables me to see overall what's going on in the environment, which layer it affects. And I can see at a glance how things are changing on a daily basis. So that's, and then all of these things can be filtered here to give you the different results. And you can also then go and export either as a Jira issues, or you can copy the link, or you can download it as a file. We also have full integration into ServiceNow and other products, but I'll talk about that shortly. We have an inventory view, which will basically, from an administrator's point of view, I just want to look at it from a systems point of view, not just the problem point of view. So again, here, you know, we can look into our Kubernetes and see what's going on there, for example. So let's start with security and compliance. Okay, so if I click into here, vulnerabilities, essentially this is listing all the vulnerabilities that have been detected on my analysis of my environment. So if I click on this one here, here is a VMware advisory. There's the original document source. Don't forget, I don't have to be connected to the internet. Imagine this is on a submarine, for example. It has all of this knowledge-based information, all these vulnerabilities on the appliance. And it's giving me the original detail about what that vulnerability and where it came from. And it's telling me that there is reliable evidence that this has already been exploited in the wild. And it gives me the details about the vulnerability here. Okay, what I need to do to go and fix it. And it's telling me in my environment, one object is unaffected by this security advisory, but 4 are affected. And when I go into analysis findings, it tells me which systems. So essentially, what this enables me to do is to, in a very, very easy way, perpetually, constantly go and look for the vulnerabilities. It's constantly scanning my ever-changing environment, and it's bringing the two together. So it means that I can mitigate risk in my environment, because most system breaches are due to known exploited vulnerabilities. Now, if you can keep on top of that, then you're mitigating risk in your environment. And then so I can say, right, I want just to do critical known exploited vulnerabilities, and I can then go and work through those. But also tell me where I'm passing. So there's zero impact. This vulnerability we've passed. So if I need to report to management that that I'm patching and I'm meeting my SLAs to the business, enables me to do that as well. Imagine having to do this manually. This will it's almost humanly impossible to do. Okay, so that's one element. That's just vulnerabilities that we do, and then we cover that across multiple product types, and we can choose on different layers. We can also do things like remediation, but I'll show you that shortly. We then have compliance profiles. So I can switch on or off any of these compliance profiles and scan my systems against them, both cloud, Windows, Linux, vSphere. So if I look at Care, for example, so here there are a number of elements where I failed. Okay, so here, for example, here's the technical description. There's the original document source from the Turkish government that our AI engine has gone and read the information. It's basically given us the detail about why this system is not Care compliant, and it's given us both in English and Turkish the detail around that. It's telling me that I've got 2 objects that have failed. So it's basically taken a Care document, it's taken that document from the Turkish government website, our AI engine, it's made it machine readable, it's then scanned my vSphere environment, and it's saying these systems don't meet this Care rule. So if you have to do that manually by reading that document and then going and auditing your systems, one day later, you're not going to be Care compliant because your systems would have changed. This is perpetual, continuous compliance. You are always going to be compliant, not compliant at a point in time. So it's identified that for us. And then what it's given us the option to do is, okay, we've discovered that we're not compliant. The engineer normally would have to go and read that document and go and make the changes on the system and work that way. But we're taking it one step further. I can highlight the environment that I want to make compliant, and I can then go and generate a script. And what it's done is it's gone and created a fully documented Power CLI script for me for that system that I can then download and deploy as part of my change control procedures. So all of these standards have different elements. So PCI DSS, again, we can choose the product. So S3 buckets, for example, and this is on AWS. So there's the original document source from PCI Security Standards.org. 45 objects are unaffected, 5 are affected, and it tells me where I'm failing on PCI DSS for AWS. So we're a true heterogeneous product. It's not just one product for Windows, one product for vSphere, one product for cloud. This is covering multiple product sets, multiple platforms. And again, we can choose the different milestones dependent upon, what you have to do. We also have the VMware security guidelines as well, so we can see where we're passing and where we're failing. Again, there's the original document source from VMware, and there's the description on how to resolve that, and there's the analysis findings as to where that's failing. So Runecast, we do not create content. We take the content from our AI engine that's feeding the appliance from the authoritative sources for this information. So I've covered vulnerabilities and I've covered compliance profiles. Now, the world is changing. We're going from, we've gone from the client server scenarios, we went to virtualization, and now we're going to containerization and cloud. And Kubernetes is a really, so many organizations now are going to Kubernetes. So when we look at Kubernetes, if we go back to detected issues, and if I select my Kubernetes environment here, so with Kubernetes, we will scan against best practices and security profiles, but that's the infrastructure of the Kubernetes environment. So it's the worker nodes, for example. So we look at the details on those. But one of the things that we do is something called a shift left approach. So that means essentially if an application has been written for Kubernetes, essentially what happens is the dev team will go and develop this application, and then it gets deployed. And then typically they'll look for vulnerabilities once it's deployed. We take a view that you have to take have an admissions controller that basically looks at the application before it gets deployed to see if it's compliant, and then we can control that with Jenkins, and we can have the admissions controller, and we can set policies. So here, for example, there are a number of vulnerabilities with this package. So what we can do is we can scan that package, and then we can then put it into a queue before it gets deployed, where DevSec have got to basically go and remediate and make sure that package becomes compliant. So that's what we do around Kubernetes. And again, we've got different admission policies that you can have, and it all goes into a Jenkins queue. We have also the ability to scan an image manually for should it be required. So that's the security and compliance piece. One thing I will mention on these security profiles here, these are the standard security profiles that basically, because if you think about compliance, compliance isn't just about what regulation says that you have to do. Organizations may also have their own internal compliance that they need to adhere to. So what we're also giving you the ability to do is do something called custom profiles. Okay, so Nicosia, custom profile here. Okay, I can go and create my own custom profile. I can then basically go to my definition database, i.e. everything that Runecast holds. So there's 10,500 different things that we hold here on the database. And I can basically go and take a particular issue and copy that issue to my own profile. And I can then give it my own criticality, and then I can start scanning against that. So it means that teams can basically develop their own, adhere to their own internal standards and scan against those standards that they define themselves. So that's the security and compliance piece, but we also do ITOM, so IT operations management. Now, personally, I think security and compliance and ITOMs are linked, because if you want to reduce your attack profile, you really need to make sure that your configuration is correct. It's not just about a vulnerability, it's about your configuration being correct as well in order to avoid vulnerabilities. So I'll start off with knowledge-based articles. So what we do with knowledge-based articles is, let's have a look. Knowledge-based articles is this is specifically around VMware. 90% of all system downtime is due to known documented issues, i.e. 90% when a system fails, 90% of the time there's a solution to the problem. It's a known problem. What we do is we have the entire VMware knowledge base pretty much on the appliance, and we scan the environment to see if any of the hosts in that environment meet the criteria for that knowledge base article to be a problem for them. But the problem hasn't happened yet. So here, ESXi host might fail with a purple screen of death. Okay, there's the original knowledge base article. But the problem hasn't happened yet in my environment. 4 systems unaffected, 3 potentially could have this problem. And it's telling me here, these systems at some point will suffer this problem. So if I can go and make the changes based on those knowledge base articles before I have the problem, it means I'm reducing the risk of downtime by 90% in my environment. So again, you know, you can put things like high availability in and things like that, but typically systems, if they're all going to suffer the same problem, high availability is not going to help you here. So this essentially is mitigating risk for you. Now, this is humanly impossible to do manually. If you imagine a system engineer goes and conducts an audit of the systems and then has to go and look at knowledge base articles, it's impossible. You can't do it. So essentially, this basically is like having an administrator 24/7, constantly watching your environment for misconfigurations. And again, we can basically filter at the top here. We also have best practices. So we look at best practices in the environment across multiple product types. Okay, so Google Cloud, for example, here. So here's a general best practice. There's the original issue ID from Google, and there's the analysis findings as to where that general best practice is not being met. So if you can basically, you know, if you imagine, again, an engineer having to read through a general best practice document, number one, it's very, very boring. Number two, it takes a long time, and then you have to go and conduct an audit on your systems. This, again, is constantly making sure that you're meeting best practices. So here, for example, here's one from VMware. VMware recommend that you disable SSH. And there's the line from the best practice document, and there's the original document. It's telling me that these systems have SSH running. So the engineer can then just go and highlight that system, generate a script, and it will create a Power CLI and an Ansible fully documented, accurate script for them to then go and run against those systems. So it means they're meeting best practices. So you can see the way that the software is used is very, very easy, very intuitive. It's very straightforward. Many of our customers, when they deploy the software, with very little training or direction, they're up and running, and it's very, very straightforward to use. So one of the other things that we do is around hardware compatibility. So a major cause of failure in a lot of environments is typically driver BIOS mismatch. So you're running a driver on a piece of hardware that is not on the hardware compatibility list. And usually those driver failures lead to a complete system failure once the driver goes, especially if it's a storage one. So what we also do is we take the VMware hardware compatibility list, and we scan your environment and we say, right, okay, this IO device is not on the HCL, and we give you a link to then go and download that driver. So this is all the IT operations management stuff. And it means that then, you know, if all is good, everything will be green. Okay. So it means that we're constantly looking at driver updates and the version that you're running to make sure that they're compatible. But one of the other benefits that we have, because we have all of this information on the appliance, is that we can scan an existing environment, say a 6.7 environment. So let's highlight this environment. So 6.7, it's running on this Proliant hardware with this BIOS version, and everything's good under 6.7 on that hardware. But I have a project, and I need to upgrade my version of vSphere. Well, what would I normally do? Well, again, I would normally go and have to conduct an audit on my hardware to see what drivers I'm running, what versions I'm running, usually create a spreadsheet, and then go and look for the latest drivers, and that takes a long time. What I can do here is, in a matter of seconds, I can say, right, I want to upgrade these systems to version 8. What is it that I will need to do to ensure that I have a successful upgrade? I could just run a simulation, and it's telling me what I need to then go and do. And again, it's usually storage drivers. So I need to go and get those and download them. So this has a number of benefits. A, it's saving time, but B, it enables IT organizations to see very, very quickly where they can repurpose hardware as well. So very good for green credentials in also preserving hardware. And last but not least, we have something called Configuration Vault. So this will look across everything in your data center that we're scanning. So that could be a vSphere environment, it could be your Kubernetes environment, it could be your AWS environment. Okay, we can scan against elastic IPs, for example. So there's a number of things that we can scan against. So if we just take a simple case here. So essentially what I can do is I can see at a single point in time what my environment looked like from a configuration point of view. Right? So these are the 3 systems, and I can see, right, I want to see what it looked like on April the 6th. Say we had a security breach, for example, and we want to look back in time to see what the configuration was. Maybe somebody went and enabled SSH and we had a security breach on April the 6th. I can go and see if there are any changes made on that system. So this enables me to look at any given time what my environment looked like. But what it also enables me to do is to do baseline comparisons. So I can highlight this system and I can say, right, I know that Vega ESXi 67-1 is my gold standard. I want my other hosts in the environment to be the same as that, but I want to see what the changes are. So I can go and then see what the compare is, what the BIOS versions is. So this will show me what the differences are, what the changes are between those 2 systems. And I can take any one of them as a baseline. So again, very, very intuitive, very, very easy to use, and it's given me information. I can look at data stores, for example, see how my data stores have changed at a glance. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of the more advanced features that we have that enable you to manipulate this information shortly. We also can look at historical changes that have happened in the environment. So I can say from this date to this date, what changes happened. And again, my data store size changed, which you would expect. So again, Configuration Vault is a very, very useful tool for looking at configuration drift, configuration changes, comparative analysis, what something looked like on a particular date. So this is all the proactive side of what Runecast does. We also have the reactive side. So what happens when there is an actual problem? So if we look here, what we also do is we look at syslogs. So we've got syslog forwarding to the analyzer. And say, for example, an error pops up on your syslogs. What we can do here is it's telling us that on these systems, I'm getting these error messages. And what it will do is it will immediately go and find the knowledge base article to go and fix that for you. So it means that the engineer does not have to go and look at syslogs and then go and try and find the knowledge base article. We will automate that process for you. And we can see over a period of time how things are changing. So the product does all of these things. Now, when we look at some of the other elements around administrating the product, it's very easy to add systems, as you can see here. We also have a plugin for vSphere, so you can see a lot of the information within the vSphere client. We've got advanced filtering systems where we can filter it. So you might have a dev test environment and you want to filter out certain rules around that. We can do that. We can switch on and switch off knowledge profiles as we wish. Licensing is very, very easy. With the licensing model, it's on VMware, it's around physical CPU socket. And then we can manage that here. It's a license file that gets downloaded, and it's a subscription-based model. And then with the other elements, it's based upon billable assets. Say, for example, in operating systems, a billable asset will be one host. But we also have the ability to have Active Directory integration. So when you log in, I can create something called organizations. So if I have my Kubernetes environment, I can put all my Kubernetes into an organization, or if it's an administrative boundary, I can do that, or if it's a different data center, I can do that. And then I can assign users to those particular organizations, either with Active Directory, OpenID Connect, or LDAP. So when they log in, they will only see their systems that relate to them. Now, because we're analyzing all of this information, we appreciate that some organizations may require to pull data from other systems and pull data from us and consolidate a view somewhere, maybe a dashboard, or they want to run further manipulation against what it is that we do. So what we also have is a token-based API, full REST API. So I can go and generate a token and give it a description and expiry date. And then I have a full API where it will give me code to go and query everything we do once I have that token access capability into the system. So a full REST API that allows you to do some really clever stuff, program some really clever stuff against us. I believe Telecom are actually utilizing this API as well at the moment for certain things. And we have integration as well. So if, for example, critical known exploited vulnerability pops up on a scan, we can go and get it to integrate into something like ServiceNow and go and create a ticket for then the IT teams to then go and manage that. Or we can basically create a JIRA issue out of that as well. Or you can basically go and query it if it's another type of system, ticketing system you have, you can go and query it via the REST API. So we're fully flexible in fitting in to your existing change control and the existing way that you do things. We also have the way that we update. So as I said before, Runecast does not need to have direct internet connectivity. We can be air-gapped. So we can sit in a dark data center. So either we can go direct to the internet if you open up the ports for it, and that's SSL, or you can choose to have your own custom repository where you download to that repository and then we go and pull it from somewhere else. So where the appliance does not have direct internet connectivity. So each appliance, in terms of scalability, will scale up to about 1,800 hosts, okay? But we also have something called Enterprise Console. So what we can also do here is basically deploy multiple analyzers and then link them together. And then one analyzer, go back here, one analyzer can then have a federated view of all the analyzers. So we can see here what's going on from a federated view. And that's quite easy to do. And again, it's API access token based. So this is what Runecast does. It's very, very flexible. It's perpetually monitoring your environment against all the security standards. It's heterogeneous, multiple platform types. It's very easy to use. The licensing model is very simple. Uptake, use of the software, people start using it straight away. And it's very, very flexible in terms of the way that we're architected as a product, because we sit in the middle and our AI engine is going and scanning all of these different knowledge sources. And then we've got connectors into these platforms. If you imagine the next best thing comes out, the next Kubernetes comes out, we can easily add that to Runecast. So recently we added Google Cloud Platform, and we didn't have to change the product. We just added a connector to Google Cloud Platform, and then our AI engine started scanning the document sources for Google Cloud. It's that simple. So we're architected in such a way that if you invest in Runecast and then the next new thing comes out, you'll be guaranteed that we will end up supporting it. So you wouldn't have to go and then change products. So this is what Runecast does. I hope you've understood me okay, and I haven't been speaking too quickly. But essentially, this is what we do. I'm not sure if there's a Q&A session now. Yunus, if you could now take over.
Teşekkürler Simon. Ezgi Hanım, nasıl yapalım? Siz bizi yönlendirirseniz ona göre ilerleyebiliriz bu tarafta.
Elbette, sorusu olan var mı? Varsa kendilerini unmute edip sorabilirler ya da chatten yazabilirler. Ya da zaten ben bu etkinliğin video kaydını YouTube kanalımıza yükleyeceğim. Akabinde bütün kayıtlı olan arkadaşlarla paylaşacağım. Mail üzerinden de Simon'a ya da bize sorularınızı iletebilirsiniz. Simon, thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
It was a very useful presentation. O zaman sorularınızı daha sonra maille alacağım gibi düşünüyorum. Bir tane çekilişimiz olacaktı. Bu çekiliş sonucunda 2 tane AirPods hediyemiz var. Bir ekran paylaşmak istiyorum sizinle. Tamam, ben buraya 2 tane bütün isimlerinizi ekledim. Başlatıyorum. Bakalım kim kazanacak? Muhammed Sümer ve İsmail Özeren çıktı. Yedekleri de özellikle tuttum. Eğer burada değillerse yedeklerde şansımızı deneyeceğiz. Burada mısınız Muhammed ve İsmail Bey? Herkes beni duyuyor mu?
Duyuyoruz.
Evet, geliyoruz.
Slide'dan toplantıda bulup çıkmış gelebilir.
Kim toplantıdaymış pardon?
Muhammed Sümer'in bir toplantısı Vardı da bir belki çıkıp oraya geri gelebilir.
Ha, İsmail Bey burada mı peki?
Ben yazıyorum kendisine.
Yok
Ha,
sanırım.
burada değillerse yoklar. Aynen. Murat Bey burada mı? Murat Öztop.
Buradayım.
Murat Bey, bir tanesi sizin. Hüseyin Alkan burada mı?
Teşekkürler.
Hüseyin Bey burada mıdır acaba? Ben de bakayım bir yandan. Evet, Hüseyin Bey buradaymış sanırım, bizi duyun. Hah, tamam. O zaman söylediğim gibi Murat Öztop ve Hüseyin Alkan'a gidiyor. Her ikisi de şu anda session'da oldukları için
Teşekkürler.
hediyelerimiz. Muhammed Bey ve
teşekkürler.
İsmail Bey için de daha sonra tekrar umarım yine şans yüzlerine güler. Ben sizden Murat Bey ve Hüseyin Bey benim e-mailim bulunuyor sizde. Şu adreslerinizi rica edeceğim kargo için.
Tamamdır.
Tekrar çok teşekkür ediyorum hepinize. Etkinliklerimiz devam edecek. Umarım bir tanesinde daha görüşürüz. Hoşçakalın.
Çok teşekkürler.
Kolay gelsin.
Hoşçakalın.
Teşekkür
Kolay
ederiz.
gelsin.